Hello, all you freedom-loving people. As the nation learns about the massive fraud in Minnesota, Nick Shirley is now being threatened for his efforts, and Elon Musk is raising awareness about the Somali connection to elections. And as the year comes to a close, let's take a look at some of the highlights of 2025. Okay, let's get into it. Today, Elon Musk shared a report that Minnesota processed 281,000 online voter registration forms with no proof of citizenship. According to his X post, Minnesota's online voting registration form mandates only a checkbox affirmation of U.S. citizenship. It does not require documentary proof of citizenship. This has fueled ongoing debates on election integrity. Reportedly, Minnesota also lets one person vouch for the eligibility of 8 migrant voters, so they can vote without having to prove citizenship. While concerns grow over how illegal migrants are being handled within the state system, there's also another major development involving how to track down the illegal immigrants. Yesterday, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration can share Medicaid information related to illegal migrants with immigration and customs enforcement officers next month. The order approved an agreement between the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and the Department of Homeland Security in July. This agreement allows ICE officials to access the personal data of 79 million Medicaid enrollees to track down illegal migrants. Then, 22 blue states sued to try and stop the Trump administration from sharing the information in July. But now, Judge Chiabria has ruled in favor of the Trump administration. U.S. District Judge Vince Chiabria ruled that ICE officials can access 6 categories of basic personal information: home address, citizenship, immigration status, phone number, date of birth, and Medicaid ID. Judge Chiabria wrote in the 7-page order, "The sharing of such information is clearly authorized by law, and the agencies have adequately explained their decisions. Beyond the basic information discussed above, the policies are totally unclear and do not appear to be the product of a coherent decision-making process." But the blue states can still appeal the ruling. The ruling, which is limited to migrants who are known to be in the country illegally, comes because 7 blue states allow migrants to receive state funds through their respective Medicaid programs. The 7 blue states are California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, New York, Oregon, and Washington. Yesterday, we reported about the recent developments regarding the fraud scandal in Minnesota, and we mentioned Nick Shirley's 42-minute documentary that received over 100 million views in just 2 days. In his video, Nick Shirley and another man went to a child care facility in Minneapolis where no children appeared to be at the center at the time. There, they also showed that the building even displayed a misspelled sign reading Quality Learning Center instead of Quality Learning Center. But then, the New York Post reported that the child care facility may have been bustling with kids all of a sudden yesterday. A local told the New York Times that the scene at the child care facility yesterday was highly unusual. The person said, "We've never seen kids go in there until today. That parking lot is empty all the time, and I was under the impression that place is permanently closed." But Ibrahim Ali, the son of the owner of the child care facility, who helps run the facility and assists with homework and paperwork, rejected the allegations. He said, "We haven't closed. We've never closed. There was never a time where kids were told to stop coming. There was never a time we told our employees to stop coming. All that is false information." The child care center says its hours are Monday to Thursday, 2 to 10 p.m. Ali claimed to the New York Post yesterday that Nick Shirley's visit came before they opened for the day. He argued, "Do you go to a coffee shop at 11 p.m. and say, hey, they're not working?" Ali said there were about 16 kids inside the center yesterday afternoon. He also blamed a graphic designer for the typo on the sign. Ali said, "What I understand is the owners dealt with a graphic designer. He did it incorrectly. I guess they didn't think it was a big issue. That's going to be fixed." A woman opening the center at 2 p.m. yesterday also said to the New York Post that Nick Shirley's reporting was a lie. She said, We don't have fraud. That's a lie. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to my lawyer. At the same time, Minnesota Department of Children, Youth and Families Commissioner Tiki Brown said yesterday that earlier inspections did not uncover fraud, but she said that regulators are now carrying out additional unannounced visits to review the concerns that have been raised by Nick Shirley's video. Brown said, "While we have questions about some of the methods that were used in the video, we do take the concerns that the video raises about fraud very seriously." Brown also said that each facility mentioned in the viral video has been visited at least once in the past 6 months as part of the state's licensing process. She said that annual inspections were conducted without advance notice to assess normal operations. Brown said that in their investigations, investigators found children present during those visits. So Brown said that officials are now looking into when the viral video was filmed as they work to determine whether the video was captured while the centers were operating or on days they were not scheduled to be open. She also noted that there's currently no pause on payments to the centers named in the video. In the meantime, ICE agents paid a visit yesterday morning to ABC Learning Center. That is several miles away from the Quality Learning Center as part of their large-scale investigation. And the Department of Justice is also at work investigating the fraud. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced yesterday that the DOJ has been investigating Minnesota's recently exposed daycare fraud for months. Bondi also said that nearly 100 individuals have been charged so far, and 85 of them are Somalis, and more than 60 individuals have already been found guilty in court so far. Bondi said that the DOJ, along with U.S. Attorney General for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, has been working for months to build cases against the alleged fraudsters. Bondi posted on X, saying that more prosecutions are coming and that Shirley's work has helped show Americans the scale of fraud in Tim Walz, Minnesota. Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez de Remer also accused Governor Walz and Representative Ilhan Omar of allowing the fraud scheme to develop. The Department of Labor said on X, "We will bring an end to the Somali fraud network." Kelly Loeffler, who is the administrator of the Small Business Administration, or the SBA, also announced on Sunday that after Nick Shirley's video, they are taking immediate action. So the SBA is cutting off all grants to Minnesota effective immediately. Loeffler said the scope of this international scam is still unknown, likely in the billions. Pending further review, SBA is freezing all grant funding to the state in order to stop the rampant waste of taxpayer dollars and uncover the full depth of the fraud. After Nick Shirley's video, not only federal officials began taking action on the fraud, but other independent journalists were also inspired to investigate similar cases in other states, such as Anthony Rubin, who traveled to Ohio, which has the second largest Somali community in the United States.
So this place here is the first place we're gonna knock, and we're gonna see if anybody picks up or answers the door. Let's see. So, it's locked. We're ringing the doorbell here. Knocking on the door. Nobody's picking up. So we're not sure what the hell's going on here, but we're gonna get out of here. Now there's somebody over there. How you doing, sir? I'm sure you see the reports over the weekend about all the daycare centers in Minnesota. We just wanted to see what was going on. Did you know anything about this place here?
It's a daycare center owned by Somalians and stuff like that.
Do you ever see any kids there?
No, because they use the back door, so I want to know if they is.
They use the back door?
Yeah, I've never seen nobody come in here, but they use the back door.
But have you ever seen any kid? You live around here?
Yeah, on this building right here.
Oh, you're in this building?
Yeah.
You're in this building too? Hey, let me ask you, have you ever seen any kids in this place here?
No, not that I know of. They use the back, so I've never seen nobody come out the front.
You've never seen anybody over there?
No, not at all.
Similar concerns are also surfacing in Washington state. Senator Ted Cruz shared a video on X on Sunday that shows 539 of about 5,000 licensed care centers in Washington state are Somali-run, with many lacking a physical address. Yesterday, Ted Cruz also expressed his opinion about the fraud scandal in Minnesota.
Look, this is a story, number one, about fraud. It's about corruption. It's about political corruption. It is about an immigrant community, the Somali community, that came over and discovered American politicians willing to be partners with them, partners in robbing the taxpayers. The scale of this theft, it really boggles the mind. You're looking at a period of years where Minnesota spent $18 billion on Medicaid, and up to half of it, $9 billion, was fraudulent. One out of every $2 spent was stolen. And the absolute staggering brazenness of this really makes the jaw drop. But it also, there was a vicious and corrupt circle where Minnesota politicians, Democrats, shoveled money to these Somali fraudsters. The Somali fraudsters made millions and even billions of dollars. They sent millions and even billions of dollars back to Somalia, back to Al-Shabaab, the Islamic terrorist group there. But they also gave thousands or even millions of dollars to Democrat politicians to get them elected. And in turn, they shoveled even more and more cash. The two joined together. It was like Bonnie and Clyde.
But with all this exposure about the fraud in the Minnesota Somali community, there also comes the risk to the whistleblowers. A Minnesota lawmaker confirmed that credible whistleblowers have come forward, but they were threatened with accusations of racism and Islamophobia if they expose the Somali fraud.
Absolutely. We have dozens of credible whistleblower reports saying that exact same thing, that people were told not to say anything because they'd be called racist or Islamophobic, or it would hurt the state. And so people tried to come forward, but were shut down. And that protection of a particular community is what really allowed this fraud to flourish in Minnesota for years. But we have said very publicly that, yes, the bulk of the fraud we've discovered so far is in the Somali community, but some of our best whistleblowers are also in the Somali community. And it's really important that we get to the truth of this issue. And so by failing to call it out, we allowed it to continue, and that has hurt Minnesotans tremendously, taxpayers and our vulnerable citizens.
And Nick Shirley himself also revealed in an interview with Donald Trump Jr. last night that he too has been threatened.
They're so mad. The Somalians are so mad. Because can you imagine, for years you're at the dinner table talking with your family about how everything's good. Oh, we don't need to worry because the government and whatnot. I mean, 81% of these people are on welfare. But on top of that, they're collecting millions of dollars for these companies. Tax exempt, by the way, especially the daycares. So can you imagine how mad they are now? Like, that's why they're right now, there's, people are so upset. Like, there's bounties on me here in Minnesota because people are so upset as far as the fraud that's being exposed, because they know their time's up and they know everyone's just sick and tired of this happening inside their own state and across America.
What have some of those threats been?
Yeah, there was apparently a bolo that they used. That's the word that some people told me was on me, and I can't reveal too much just because I don't want to reveal. But lots of messages, death threats, obviously, on social media. And then it's just not the most safe thing for me to be moving around freely right now.
I think that's fair. I mean,
yesterday, President Trump said that sometime before last Friday, the United States had knocked out a loading facility that was linked to Venezuelan drug boats. So if the facility was in Venezuela, it would be the first known attack on land since the Trump administration began its military campaign against Venezuela. President Trump first mentioned the strike in a radio interview last Friday. That interview was with John Catsimatidis, who is a Republican billionaire and owner of the WABC radio station in New York. Their conversation began with U.S. military strikes that were carried out on Christmas Day in Nigeria, before shifting to how the Trump administration has been targeting drug trafficking in Venezuela.
5,000 American lives. It's very simple. And what's happening is they're having a hard time employment-wise, they can't get anybody. And we just talked out, I don't know if you read or you saw, they have a big plant or a big facility where they send where the ships come from. 2 nights ago, we knocked that out. So we hit them very hard. But drugs are down over 97%. Can you believe it?
During that interview, President Trump only offered a few details at the time, and the remarks have since gone largely unnoticed by the mainstream media. Venezuelan officials have also not commented on the reported strikes, and the White House did not provide any additional information about it either. Then, yesterday at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump talked a bit more about the strike while he was hosting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
There was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
Is that the only strike that the U.S. has done?
I don't want to comment on that.
And today, there was a major military strike in the Middle East. This time, the strike was launched by Saudi Arabia against Yemen's southern port city. Saudi Arabia said that they targeted a shipment of weapons from the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, to support separatist forces in Yemen. Saudi Arabia also said that they launched the operation at night in order to avoid civilian casualties or unintended damage. After the strike, Saudi Arabia asked the UAE forces to leave Yemen within 24 hours. Yemen has been in conflict since 2014 when the Iran-backed Houthis took control of its capital city and forced its recognized government to flee. Then Saudi Arabia and the UAE stepped in the following year to support Yemen's recognized government. But despite starting as partners, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have since backed rival groups inside Yemen. Now the concern is that Saudi Arabia and the UAE are both influential members of OPEC, which have an upcoming meeting on January 4th, and a prolonged dispute between them could make it difficult to agree on oil production, and it could affect global oil prices. Gold and silver tumbled after touching record highs. Yesterday, silver futures, or paper silver, retreated sharply in the West after initially breaching the $80 per ounce threshold, plunging by 7%. The latest trading price hovered around $71.79 to $72 per ounce. Intraday, silver tumbled 15% from peak to trough, making its steepest intraday swing since a 16.85% decline in August of 2020. Jeff Kilberg, the chief investment officer of KKM and Financial, said, "This is a historic move. We haven't seen a move like this in a long time." He attributed this pullback to profit taking and year-end tax benefit harvesting. But at the same time, in China, buyers were still paying over $90 an ounce for physical silver because China locks in silver exports on January 1st, and because COMEX is down 70% in inventory since silver is being used faster than it's being mined, and silver is a critical metal for the tech industry and for electric vehicles and solar panels. And regarding gold, gold futures fell 4.5% to just above $4,340 per troy ounce. Other precious metals also retreated, with platinum falling more than 14% from its early session high, which is normal for the market to fluctuate. The reasons for silver's substantial conservative gains previously encompass multiple factors. We conducted some analysis on this yesterday. However, economists caution that silver's volatility tends to get greater than that of gold. It often surges in a parabolic fashion before experiencing a sudden collapse. Mike McGowan, the senior commodity strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence, told Yahoo Finance earlier this month, "When it gets this stretched, be careful." However, some analysts believe that silver may rebound and recover in the near future. One contributing factor is that China, as the world's third largest silver producer, is expected to impose the restrictions on silver exports commencing in January. Jeff Kilberg said, "I think this is a reset, a reprieve, just a one-day end-of-year move. But I think both precious metals, gold and silver, continue their trajectory higher. Charu Chanana, the chief investment strategist at Saxo Bank, noted that the broader outlook for precious metals remains underpinned by factors including more accommodative interest rates, persistent physical and geopolitical uncertainty, and the demand for capital diversification. Kilberg anticipates that these demands will continue to drive silver prices upward through 2026, potentially pushing them to $90 to $100. According to the Wall Street Journal, the surge in silver prices has fueled speculative buying among amateur investors, with enthusiasm on the Reddit investment community shifting towards silver in anticipation of further price increases. So today is our penultimate show of 2025. At this time of year, we typically discuss topics that offer a year-end summary. Today, we shall turn to economic matters. This year, the Trump administration has unleashed a whirlwind of tariffs across every corner of the globe, effectively reshaping the global economic landscape that had been established over the preceding half-century. Amidst the impact of the new tariffs, global GDP growth stands at 3.2%, which appears to be a respectable figure. So why have tariffs not inflicted significant damage upon the global economy? This is because nations have proactively implemented various measures to mitigate the effect of tariff increases. On the one hand, they are actively negotiating with the Trump administration to reduce or delay tariffs. Simultaneously, affected businesses across nations are minimizing economic losses through measures such as stockpiling goods in advance and engaging in transit trade. Moreover, companies are absorbing part of the profit losses incurred by tariffs in order to cope with this sudden change. Consequently, end consumers in various countries have not felt much of an impact. The Trump administration recently announced substantial tariff revenues, and they proposed distributing $2,000 in tariff benefits to every American citizen. However, from an economic perspective, tariffs are not necessarily intended to generate revenue. The United States' total imports amount to $4.1 trillion. So applying a 25% tariff would yield a maximum of $1 trillion in tariffs, yet the cost could be a bit antagonizing to the exporting nations. Therefore, the primary purpose of tariffs is not entirely economic. Rather, it is also political and national security related. One of the goals of President Trump's new tariff policy is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. In this regard, the effect is quite evident. To summarize the shift brought about by tariffs in a single sentence, in the past, production went wherever it was cheapest. Now it goes wherever it is safest. President Trump's tariff policy during his first term targeted solely the Chinese Communist Party. This latest round of tariffs, however, is a comprehensive global measure. I don't believe President Trump seeks to antagonize the entire world. His primary objective remains to target the Chinese Communist Party. Yet the Chinese regime is exceedingly cunning. If high tariffs are imposed only on Chinese goods, Chinese enterprises will circumvent them through re-export trade or by establishing factories in other developing nations. So Tariff 2.0 has closed the loop that the Chinese Communist Party had been exploiting. Hence, we are witnessing nations announcing plans to establish factories in the United States. Since other nations are merely secondary targets, the Trump administration has simultaneously imposed high tariffs while opening its door to welcome countries to the White House for negotiations. First, let us examine the European Union. The EU previously enjoyed favorable trade relations with the United States. Previously, American tariffs averaged between 2 and 3%, which could be described as virtually negligible. So the EU was stunned when the US abruptly announced a 20% tariff on April 7th. The EU adopted a first stance by imposing retaliatory tariffs on 95 billion euros worth of American industrial goods and agricultural products. Then, following negotiations, a provisional agreement was reached, a 15% base tariff, with steel retaining a 50% rate. And rather than the US's uniform 25% rate on all vehicles, EU automobiles would only face a 15% tariff. The EU has also pledged to purchase $750 billion worth of energy from the United States over the next 3 years, while they have also committed to invest $600 billion in the US. Concurrently, automobiles exported from the US to the EU will benefit from zero tariffs. Although the United States imposes a nominal tariff of 15% on the European Union, numerous pre-existing trade agreements mean that the effective tariff rate concurrently stands below 10%. And since the UK is a close ally of the United States, the UK swiftly concluded an agreement with Washington, securing a 10% tariff rate. Additionally, up to 100,000 vehicles per year benefit from a 10% tariff quota instead of the 25% rate. And steel and aluminum imports also receive preferential treatment. And Australia faced a similar situation. Originally, Australia's substantial exports of aluminum ore to the United States were subject to high protective tariffs. However, following protests from Australia, the United States reduced the tariffs on these minerals to around 10%. Both Japan and South Korea have also adopted the approach of exchanging investment for tariff reductions. This is because the United States is a major customer for Japanese and South Korean exports. Their automotive and electronic products primarily target the American market. Consequently, they lack the confidence to confront the United States. Japan has pledged to invest $550 billion into the United States, directing capital toward American manufacturing, aerospace, energy sectors, and more. Furthermore, Japan has committed to increasing imports of American agricultural products and accelerating the pace of American vehicles entering the Japanese market. And South Korea has pledged to invest $350 billion into the US. Meanwhile, Japanese and South Korean giants such as Toyota, Hyundai, and Samsung are accelerating the pace of establishing manufacturing facilities within the United States. In return, the United States has reduced tariffs on Japanese and South Korean imports to 15%, including automobiles. This demonstrates that these nations are regarded as second-tier allies positioned behind the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Australia. And then India presented a rather unique case. Initially, the United States imposed reciprocal tariffs of 26% on India. India made no significant concessions, showing no willingness to ease market access restrictions or open its agricultural markets. Tariffs were reduced from 26% to merely 25%. Subsequently, due to India's prior purchases of Russian energy, the United States imposed secondary sanctions on India, adding an additional 25% punitive tariff. Consequently, India's tariff rate rose to 50%. However, the market perceives this as unlikely to be a permanent tariff, and India is highly likely to make concessions. India's stance is rather firm, which is actually quite understandable. The Indian market does not rely so heavily on the United States. It has always been a relatively closed market, and in recent years has developed quite rapidly. India is capable of withstanding such short-term shocks. Hence, it has the confidence to stand up to the United States. Then we have the CCP. The Chinese Communist Party is well aware that these tariffs are primarily aimed at China, or more specifically at the CCP. Hence, Beijing's response has been the most vehement, and its stance is the most uncompromising. Initially, neither side would yield, with reciprocal tariffs reaching as high as 145%. It was not until the Geneva talks in May that negotiations began to progress. These discussions continued through the Busan meeting in October, culminating in a provisional trade agreement. On the American side, the 24% additional reciprocal tariffs have been suspended for 1 year, and the fentanyl tariff was reduced from 20% to 10%, and restrictions on the entity list have been suspended, among other measures. On the Chinese side, Tariffs have also been reduced. Restrictions on rare earth exports have been suspended. Commitments have been made to purchase American soybeans, and pledges have been given to curb the flow of fentanyl-related substances into the United States. Of course, everyone is well aware that this is merely a tactical truce between the two sides. As for how matters will unfold subsequently and how this trade agreement will be implemented, that will depend on the outcome of the political infighting within the Chinese Communist Party, and whether the reformists prevail or the conservatives win the day. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.